This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations.
We want families to come here and gain insightful strategies that empower them to successfully teach diverse learners at home.
Hosted by founder and CEO of SPED Homeschool, Peggy Ployer.
Our goal is that these powerful weekly conversations will boost your confidence to cultivate the best at-home learning environment for your student.
For more homeschool resources, go to spedhomeschool.com. You're listening to Empowering Homeschool Conversations with Peggy Ployer.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Empowering Homeschool Conversations. Today, we are going to talk about motivating writers. Today, we are going to talk about motivating writers. Ideas are genius. And I want to welcome my special guests today, Sara Evans and Kimberly Bredberg. Welcome, ladies. I am so excited to have you both on the show to share about writing.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. So how this conversation started was actually over 2 years ago, 2.5 years, actually. I was in the Grand Tetons, and my family was going to be taking a float trip, and I met Sara, who was looking at the water, and you were debating about putting a canoe in. Was that correct? And we somehow got chatting, and 2 years later, she finds my business card in her wallet. And so we scheduled something, and I'm excited. I think this timing, though, is perfect. There are more and more people that are homeschooling, and as this broadcast is coming out, we're coming into the holiday season, and there's a lot of parents sitting on the fence. This is usually the time of the year they say, school isn't working out like we had thought it would. And so we think we might homeschool, but yet maybe they have a child that they don't know how to teach a certain subject, and writing and reading are one of those top ones that a lot of parents are like, I think I might need an expert for this. But I want you to listen to what Sara and Kimberly have to say in this broadcast about just a much more simplified approach to writing. And they are veterans. They have been there, done that. And so I want them to share a little bit of their background first, just to encourage you about what knowledge they're coming into this conversation with and why you need to listen to this whole hour. So which one of you ladies would like to start?
Shall I start it off, Sara?
Sure.
Okay. Hello, my name is Kim Bredberg, and I homeschooled all 4 of my children. I'm a mom of 4. I have 1 daughter and 3 sons. My husband was my childhood sweetheart, and I went to school. I have a kind of a diverse background. I'm a person who is probably mildly on the dyslexic spectrum. I was kind of a late bloomer, but I have 2 degrees from my undergraduate endeavor. I have a degree in neuroscience, and I also have a degree in sculpture. And I really believe that those 2 worlds have a very interconnected role to play. I went on later to get a master's degree in writing but when I was at the very tail end of homeschooling my children, after I had started Blackbird Company and my nonprofit organization that was a micro school in Los Angeles. So my passion as an artist / scientist is writing. I love writing poetry. I've written a book. I've developed all of our curriculum. And I believe that writing is an art form, and I can't wait to chat about that more with you all today. So
awesome. Well, that's wonderful. And you, Sara?
Well, my name's Sara Evans, and I have 2 children. They are not children anymore. They're 29 and 30, or 31. And a daughter and a son. And I met Kim, interestingly, at a garage sale. I had heard that she was teaching kindergarten. My daughter was turning 5, and I had always been thinking about homeschooling. We'd been kind of researching it for years, and I just love being with my daughter. I didn't want to send her away to a school.
Yeah.
And so Kim said, well, I'm actually thinking of starting something on my own. And I said, can I join you? And poof, our friendship started, and we had a homeschool co-op in San Luis Obispo, where I live, for a number of years. A lot of families joined us, and my educational background was just, I went to Cal Poly. I was a child development major. I don't have a lot of fancy degrees at all, but I have a passion to be with my kids, and a passion to learn, and just, I'm a lifelong, I love learning. And I wanted that to be a real focus for my children, that they would be lifelong learners. So what we created was a super creative school. We integrated art and reading and writing and math and history and everything together, but we had a real creative emphasis. So if we were studying something like California history, we made a big, huge California quilt that all the kids participated in, and just jillions of things like that. I focused a lot on teaching kids hand arts. I taught kids to embroider, to knit, to
how wonderful.
cook, to quilt. It was like rug hook. I mean, we did so many things like that. We were trying to make it really rich like that. So, and then we, just had a philosophy that each kid in our group had certain genius, and we were trying to figure out what that genius was for each child,
right?
And let them, flourish in that area. And then we really had a big emphasis a lot on reading good books, and then our ideas to develop the integrating of reading and writing really was born there. And then we went on to have Blackbird Company, our curriculum company, which is language arts for K through 12.
Yeah. I have to pull 2 nuggets out of there that, you talked about every child has a genius. I think we sometimes forget that, especially in our community, just because we focus so much on what's not happening well instead of what is happening well. And so I love that you guys take that approach. And also the fact that you met at a garage sale and developed a friendship and said, let's do this together. There's so many people out there looking for community when they homeschool. And I think we miss that there's community possibilities all around us, and we have to embrace just the people God puts in front of us. That is oftentimes the best community. And sometimes my kids would come home and they're like, I made this friend, and the mom and I ended up being better friends than the 2 boys. So, but it's just, we are surrounded by community opportunities, and we have to definitely take those. But yeah, well, that is so awesome, and so awesome what has grown out of that Blackbird Company. We're going to be talking a bit about your curriculum as well. Can you give us just a little introduction to what you guys offer?
So what we offer is we have complete English language arts kindergarten through high school, but our methodology is super different, and it comes out of us asking the question, what is writing? And I think that writing has become calculus in the education realm.
Yes, very good analogy.
And it's really not supposed to be. Yeah, calculus is, it's a word that means many, many, many pieces, right? And writing is not meant to be many pieces. It's meant to convey an idea. It's meant to be passionate. It's meant to be an art form. And so we have to approach that differently, and we have to not overshadow both books and writing with grammar, mechanics, and style. Um,
Right.
So I always I wanted to hold up. So this is just a small piece of some of the standards that we're given as educators that
hmm
kind of make us sweat when we
Right.
see them,
Exactly.
right? Which
is
and
crazy
we're
because
like,
even somebody trained is sweating versus, as parents,
yeah,
like I told these ladies before we came on, I didn't even know what the word phonics was when I started homeschooling. So that it
yeah.
kind of makes me curl up in a ball and want to go, no, not doing this.
Yeah, and we shouldn't do that, because I will bring this in early. We have, as we've adopted, in terms of how do we communicate our methodology, we've adopted a little phrase that comes from the art world. This is a phrase that was invented by, or put forth by, the Bauhaus artists in the 1940s. And the phrase is form follows function. And
Yes.
I love that so much, because function is the function of a piece of writing, whether it's a word or a phrase or a sentence, an essay, a novel. The purpose is to convey an idea, right? And it's to give something to an audience. And that's the function. So grammar, style, mechanics, phonics, alphabet, everything
Right.
else has to follow that idea.
Right.
And I think that if there's, one thing we can say about our business, it is that, we're going to make sure that students graduate high school super articulate, able to communicate their ideas, but also that they will know the process and they'll understand the form. Because the more you grow, words have specificity, and rules, rhetoric can help us to shape our ideas beautifully. So
Yeah. Yeah. What do you have to add to that, Sarah?
I think that it's really important to remember that there's an end game in that writing and ideas, idea making in general informs every field of life, whether it's science, history, sociology, whatever, that you have to believe in your ideas. First off, you've got to realize that you actually are capable of having original ideas, and that, all those fields are made up of, real science comes from real ideas, real writing comes from real ideas.
Right.
And I didn't know this when I was homeschooling. I never really thought about the future of my kids. I was so focused. I mean, I thought of it, I guess, in a vague way, but I was so
Right.
focused on getting it all done right now and doing it right. And am I going to be arrested if I do it
Right.
wrong, But it was interesting to my daughter is a PA, and she went off to graduate school in Oregon and was in a super competitive environment applying for this certain school. And we understood that there would be thousands of applicants, and they took like 2% of the
Wow.
applicants. So that was where, and she needed to write a personal statement, and she took months to write it. And it was when I went, oh, this is why we are doing this, why we want to start with children when they're really, really young, to
Right.
help them believe that they have ideas. I mean, it shows. I'm talking to families, kids are standing there, sometimes teenage kids, and, I'll just turn to them and say, do you realize that you have original ideas in your head? And sometimes they're just like, what? Like, no, but I have
I think the
ideas. It's
traditional
like,
school system tells they don't, because they're filling them with
Right.
everything that they have instead. Yes.
yeah, such a top down
Right.
approach. But when my daughter had finished writing this personal statement, it was so beautiful because she's an artist, but she's going into a scientific field, but she chose to write about the weaving of science and art together, medicine and art together.
Yeah.
And it was so beautiful. But we knew that there would be hundreds of applicants that would just say the word, I want, they will start their essay with, I want to help people,
Right.
and there's no way that's going to stand out. It's like, oh, obviously you want to help people, you're going to that field. So it was fun to see the real life application of that. And then she got accepted. There are many parts to being accepted, but that's a big part of it. There's a big room full of doctors sitting there reading these things, and something has to stick out. So that's, that's just one teeny example of that.
And when you get to that age, my daughter, when she was in college, she went to Loyola Marymount, and she was in the honors program. And after she took the entry-level writing class, the professor asked her if she would be one of the writing coaches for the kids that came through.
Wow.
She actually got into Loyola like at the 9th hour in May. We weren't even expecting to apply for a year. They said, please apply, because of her writing, because they saw samples of her writing. And so the first day that she was on the job in this, teaching or coaching kids, so the professor gave a prompt, and it was a really wonderful, open-ended, interesting prompt. And she had 9 people in her charge, and all of them came in the first day in a panic. What are we supposed to say? What are we supposed to say? What are we supposed to say? Like almost just panicking.
Wow.
And she said, well, you could approach this through the field of science, or you could talk of this through the field of music, and then she stopped and said, what is your idea? And they all just got blank, and they got petrified. And this is, back this all the way up to the child. I just, had a conversation with a wonderful mama with a 2nd grade child who was being given assignments that were way above her skill level. So it's like, you have to bring this down to the skill level, and you have to put the idea first. So you even drop the skill level a little to say, what's your idea? And that's the way that you see growth. That's the way that you see motivation. And it's a long-term process.
You can't wait till the end.
Yes.
Right.
To
so
say,
true.
what is your idea? If you haven't been working that muscle all your life of what is your idea, and fostering that, it gets pretty difficult.
Totally difficult.
Exactly.
I like to always say that, in order to answer the question, what is writing? I like to go to the great writers. And this is why we integrate, great writing with writing exercises. So I think about, I wrote down some of my favorites. I think about Madeline L'Engle. What she says about writing is you have to write a book that wants to be written. And so take that down into when you're teaching, you have to write what wants to be written, an idea. Don't write what I want you to write. Write what you want to write. And then C.S. Lewis says you can make anything by writing. That's a great motivator to a child. You can make anything by writing.
Creator. Yes.
Right. And that taps you into what we are. We're all created to be creators. Whatever field we are in.
Absolutely.
Then we always lean on Ernest Hemingway. Ernest Hemingway said, if you can write one true sentence, you can write anything. So it's like we take it down to, what are the great writers saying? And then we make this great analogy. Sara, maybe you want to share the little lesson that we always give about writing sentences.
Oh, I'd love that.
Sara.
I'm here.
About if you're going to write a sentence about something. I think you have an object, don't you?
Oh, that's what you're talking about. Okay. Sorry.
Sorry.
So let's say I have an object. Here is a ceramic leaf. and if I were to put this in front of some children and I was trying to do a writing thing, the first thing we're not going to think is, okay, I need to go hunt for an adverbial phrase. I need to hunt for, an independent clause, et cetera, et cetera. We're not going to approach it from a place of grammar, right? I'm going to ask them to describe this object.
Yeah.
What do you see? I'm going to ask them, what do you see?
Mhm.
And then compose sentences about what they see. And obviously, a kindergartner is going to compose something a little differently than a fifth grader or a
Right.
high school
Yeah.
student. And that's okay and great. But
Mhm.
you really want them to think about what they're seeing. It's observation. So you're using the
Right.
powers of observation and then writing. And then you write your sentences and then you go back and clean it up if there's grammar problems or spelling problems. But if you approach sentence writing from the get-go, I mean, I think what we're really trying to say with this calculus thing is that
Right.
if you're super hung up and all you teach is grammar and spelling and all these things that are important in writing, but they're not the most important thing. If you don't bring the
Right.
ideas first, then you just have dry, really laborious writing exercises, and then kids hate writing. And we
Right.
have had that experience so many times being at shows where, families come up, my sixth grader hates writing. He hates writing, and
Right.
or it, and so it's just like, oh no, you, how do we remediate that? How do we, it goes back to the idea. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of writing programs are so heavily focused on that.
Exactly.
And then it crushes the idea because writing is an art form. And also, I always try to tell parents, whenever you share an idea, that's a vulnerable thing to do.
Right.
So in our
That is
program,
true.
when we're asking them when they're going to compose their paragraph, there's a writing prompt that they get from the reading. And then as they share that idea, the worst thing you can do at that point is say, oh man, that doesn't make sense. Or that's, you spelled this wrong. And, da.
Right.
So it's like, oh, the better way to go about that is to say, what a great idea. How can we write some sentences that support that idea? Let's get some more ideas, a few more
Right.
sentences on the paper that support that idea. And then you help them clean it up, so to speak. But they can read it out loud. They can hear weird tense problems because they
Oh yeah.
typically speak English. And then you can point out one or two errors, but then you really talk about that idea and make that the primary thing. Then, over time, what's really amazing, we've noticed this for years, is because in our program, kids do 6 books in the year and they write 24 paragraphs and hundreds of sentences using that muscle of writing
Right.
that Hemingway talked about, one true sentence. And from September to June, there's a shocking, amazing improvement in their writing just because they've been sharing their ideas consistently over 24 paragraphs. And
No.
if it's done right and you conference with them and you coach them through the little changes they need to make,
Right.
they just blossom and become really good writers. But if you just crunch down, like with
Right.
criticism, it's like, because your ideas do make you vulnerable,
They
whenever
do.
you share
Yeah.
them. So
And I
That's
think
great.
even more than the crunch down is kind of what are the mainstream kind of traditional approach to teaching writing is much more heavy on form. You get a little bit of idea making, and that idea making is oftentimes becomes a really critical period because it's not incorporating all of this, mechanics that you're required to make
Right.
to incorporate in those pieces. I think that the deconstructive philosophy towards writing has really shrunk our kids' ability to write their ideas. If you go into any of the state standards, Common Core, or whichever state you're in, and you look at the standards for writing, there's not one standard for voice. It never talks about voice. It never talks about, what is your idea? Well, very clearly delineate, all of, you're able to use an adverb, you're able to, use an apostrophe and a contraction, and you're able to spell conventionally, and, all of these other standards, which are important standards after idea making.
Right.
So giving our kids that opportunity to make those ideas, and to shrink these many exercises into kind of pinpointed, okay, this year we're going to focus on what are the parts of speech, for the purpose of understanding that words have enormous potential. There are nouns, there are verbs, there are adverbs, and isn't that wonderful? So even the way that we approach teaching grammar is different, because we have kids make sentences. So the same thing that Sara was saying, if I said to anybody in any audience, I'd like you to write a sentence about your favorite pair of shoes, not one person is going to go to their grammar box. Nobody.
No, right.
But you will afterwards. So it's basically, we're flipping. We're trying to, do this.
Well, the natural way that you would write something if you were asked to express yourself versus to just correct yourself.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
And it's interesting. And those standards, we know where it all comes and boils down to is they have to be able to test. And to be able to test somebody for their ideas is basically impossible, except it turns around when they turn 18 and they have those college entrance papers that they have to write to, talk about themselves. And then they just kind of go, well, what am I supposed to write about? Nobody's giving me a prompt. I have
Correct.
no idea.
Yeah. I don't have an idea. What's an idea? Even worse. What's an idea?
Right, exactly.
Well, and to make somebody feel insecure about their ideas. I mean, that was, even, when I was in graduate school, for my master's degree in writing, all of the professors who were, all from all over the country, from, the big schools, they would come to our workshops and they would say, what we really want is we want you to be able to know the rules and then break the rules. That's another really important part of art making.
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
can't break the rules without knowing the rules. But they said, one of the rules I remember being pounded on me during high school is you may not ever write using the word I. You may not write an essay using the word I. Well, guess what? When I was in graduate school, they said, please use the personal pronoun. Please use I. That's what narrative writing is all about.
Exactly.
And so that's, opened things up. But it's interesting, this kind of Suzuki method of teaching writing, cookie cutter, do 3 of these and 4 of these and 5 of these. And, then you'll have this wonderful stylistic piece. Well, no,
maybe
something that sounds, I have a really good, one of my friends is a visual artist, and she just got a write-up in an E magazine. And she sent me her piece that was being written by someone else and asked me to offer some edits. And I did. And then she texted me a little while later and said one of her friends ran it through an AI program. And what was so funny about this, we were laughing because it was super affected sounding, and it was just like the AI went to the source and changed all of the adjectives and adverbs, and it sounded super pretentious.
Wow.
And so that's not what we want to teach our children. That's
Right,
what this kind
exactly.
of cookie cutter teaching, like take a word and go to the source. No. You have to choose just the right word. And to do that, you have to gain this love for words. And we have Operation Lexicon. We offer vocabulary exercises weekly to get kids to really love words, right?
Absolutely. Yes, I found that just, exposing my kids to good literature helped with that a lot. Those stories feed more stories. That's just the way it is. And it's like you go to an art museum, you see art and you want to create art. It's just you would get inspired. And if we're not inspired, we're not going to do anything. And so, yes.
Can I read you guys something?
Yes.
I want to read some of my favorite art. And this is a little clip from Charlotte's Web. And to me, this is just what it's all about. It was the best place to be, thought Wilbur, this warm, delicious cellar with the garrulous geese, the changing seasons, the heat of the sun, the passage of swallows, the nearness of rats, the sameness of sheep, the love of spiders, the smell of manure, and the glory of everything. I just wanted to chime that in because what's so neat about all these different authors we read is their voice.
Absolutely.
You can recognize Madeleine L'Engle's voice, you can recognize E.B. White's voice, and so we want kids to develop their voice too. And that's the problem with the prescripted writing, is that I once had someone bring me a couple of essays, 3 actually, that their different kids had written, but they had written them according to a program, that they were following. And they said, well, what do you notice? And I said, well, before I say anything, what do you notice? And they said, they all sound the same. I go, exactly.
Yeah.
three different kids, but these things sound exactly the same. And that's kind of what we're antithetical to that.
Right.
So since we're in the mode of reading, I'd love to read some actual student writing from
absolutely.
So these are level 3. These are middle school students who used our program for a while. So every week we give a prompt. So this one is: describe a time when a new season began in your life, a time you would label as important and the start of something new. So 2 different students, and you'll hear just this vastly different voice. Have you ever been the new student? I for sure have. I went to a middle school that I didn't like at all. It was a public school and it had around 800 kids. It was very large and it was very uncomfortable. I also had a bad friend group, which made me upset all of the time. In mid-October, I decided that I would try out this private school that I had tried out in the middle of the 5th grade. So I went there for a trial day and ended up really liking it. To make things even better, I already knew some people. So I had to make a big decision in a week. I had to decide what school I was going to attend. On one side, the public school had many activities that I had been looking forward to. Still, I decided to go to the private school. 1 week later, I was in attendance. Like I said before, I knew only some people. I was very new to the setup of homework there. However, after a little while, I got used to everything and I felt very welcome. In conclusion, if you're ever new to something, just go for it. You might just end up loving it. Okay, so
Good
same,
advice from middle schooler.
isn't that cute? So
Yeah.
this is the same prompt, a different writer. 43 match point, I say to my friend JJ, who waits for Steve. The ball goes in the bar. I end up winning a tough rally. Winning that match started a new season in my life. It started my love for tennis. I had just joined my little town in Connecticut's tennis team for the summer. My friends also joined. My afternoons on Mondays, Wednesdays, and sometimes Fridays are spent with tennis team practice or matches during the summer. I loved it so much that I played tennis during the school year, more so I could get better for the summer. Sure enough, I came back better than some of my friends and ready to play. I'm better at tennis team matches as well because I play so often. Winning matches was much easier. Playing tennis makes me feel happy, confident, and strong. So that's what we want writing to do. Those are two very different ideas, right?
Exactly. Yes. And it dives into something we talked about on our broadcast a couple months ago. We were spending a whole month talking about how when you personalize education for a student, they have that ability to draw from within them an energy that you just can't get out if you're just
So
doing
true.
rote types of things. But when we
Yeah.
get that excitement comes up and it's about something I love, something that I want to do more of, that creativity, that energy just boosts, and
Yeah.
students can write and do so many other things when they have that.
So what those two students, basically what we do in our methodology is we give permission. It's like,
Mhm.
you have permission. It's exactly what my daughter was doing with those college students. You have
Right.
permission to write your idea tied to this prompt.
Yeah.
And they can be as diverse as these two little students, ideas.
Right. It's not about getting the right answer. And I think that
Yeah.
you have to get that out of our heads. So
Yeah.
how do people like who come in with that mentality, come into a curriculum like yours? How does that switch happen? And is it easy? Not so, or some and others not?
Um, I've had many, 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 many experiences with this, and it ranges from, the first thing that you do is give permission. You have
Yeah.
permission to write your idea. Some students are coming in from this really heavy, heavy-handed, rigorous, deconstructive methodology. Some
Right.
students are coming in from the once and done. There's a lot of curriculum out there who are like, oh, you journaled for today. Great. I'm not going to look at it. It's yours. It's beautiful. I'm not going to touch it.
Yeah.
And those are the two, kind of sides of the spectrum.
Mhm.
But I've had, I can think of two examples. One was a high school student, a young lady who was going into the 10th grade, came to my little hybrid program with a 0.5 GPA from her public school. She was
Oh, wow.
crushed. She
Mm.
was crushed. So we took her way, way back in our curriculum, let her read really simple chapter books. I let her cozy up on the couch, and, I wanted her to, feel safe. And ultimately, over time, I want you to write your ideas. I want you to make your ideas. She got very interested in photography, which gave her a little more confidence to write. And by the time that she graduated from high school, we graduated her with a 2.5, and she was able to go on to a junior college. She could write. She wrote beautiful poetry. She was able to convey her ideas in essay form. and off she went.
Yeah.
I had another young man who came to me who I got many calls when he started taking my writing classes, and from teachers, oh, we don't really know what to do with him. He's on the spectrum. He's never going to amount to much. And right away, I just,
Yeah.
no,
Mm-mm.
that's not acceptable. This is a human, this is a created being. This is a lovely person. And so I began writing with this young man. Well, fast forward, a year later, he won a National Scholastic Arts and Writing Award for a poem he wrote. And he went on to get an MFA in writing and has 2 books published.
Wow.
So, it's, and it's every single person in the world can write and should write.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So, yeah. Does that answer your question? I think
it's
permission giving. The parent and the
Mm-hmm.
student need to be giving permission, right?
Mm-hmm.
We need
Absolutely.
to look at what this child is writing, and we need to be gently manipulating their idea, not writing our idea, not focusing on form, but focusing on idea and then smoothing form. And
Right.
I think it takes a couple of our core units for the rhythm to start, but there's never been any problem with that.
Yeah, I was going to ask, the motivation, especially for students who come out of a situation like that are just so down on themselves, or, they've been told so many times, you can't write. And that process of moving them out of that. And it's just continually being given that permission. I know when I first started
Yes.
homeschooling, I remember the first time I watched a video of one curriculum, and the one I ended up choosing was, you can pick and choose what you want because you're unique, and you're going to teach your kids different than somebody else. But we've made this curriculum, to come alongside. And I was like, that is so freeing. I love that.
Yeah.
Instead of, somebody just telling you, you've got to do this, this, and this. And if you don't do all the little steps, it's just not going to turn out right. And you go into a state of panic instead of embracing that freedom and really enjoying yourself. And that's really what you two have been talking about, is that the giving of that freedom over and over again. And
I think that what we've done is we've created a scaffolding for that to happen. So we know what has to, we know the goal ultimately is for the child to graduate high school, and this young person should be able to think and read and write well. And that takes all 13 years.
Right.
And so what we've done is we've given this scaffolding to write, gain skills, write, gain more skills, write. So it's writing over time, lifting the pencil and doing the heavy work of idea making over time. Because I have a friend who was a colleague, worked with me and said, if we give our children all the right art materials, the most expensive paint, the most expensive canvas, they'll be able to make a masterpiece. And that's not true either. That's right. I said, no, they will make mud. That will end up in a big muddy mess on the canvas.
Right.
So
we need to be taught too. There's 2 sides to that coin. Yeah.
And so this is where we like to support parents, because when you're homeschooling, you're the teacher. And so we've put all of the instructions you need inside the student guide. We have helps material. We're developing videos, because becoming a writing coach is just as scary as being a writer. Right?
Yes, absolutely. So true. Yeah. Sarah, did you have something to add to that? I know you were going to say something earlier.
Yeah, I was thinking of giving a practical, Kim, I was thinking it would be cool if you talked about how you had your kids doing poetry and sitting at the table, and just some of the ideas that you used to spark, like,
Yeah.
I don't know what to write, like
Yes.
just some
Yes.
of those cool
Yeah.
things to get. I just love
Yeah.
that story about the tea.
Yeah. So this is a story we wanted to share, and it's
Oh.
I
Oh,
have
I've
a
seen
whole
it. Yes.
I
Mhm.
love these books. I have a massive collection of poetry books. But a long time ago, I had a group of little kids in my living room around the table, and it was a beautiful fall day, and the light was streaming in from the shutters. And I said, okay, we're going to read a sonnet. We're going to read Composed Upon Westminster Bridge, September 3rd, 1802 by William Wordsworth. And they weren't intimidated. I was a
Right.
little intimidated, right? but not really. So I started reading. Earth has not anything to show more fair. Dull would he be of soul who could pass by a sight so touching in its majesty. The city now doth like a garment wear the beauty of the morning, silent, bare. Ships, towers, domes, theaters, and temples lie open unto the fields and to the sky, all bright and glittering in the smokeless air. Never did sun more beautifully steep in his first splendor, valley, rock, or hill. Never saw I, never felt a calm so deep. The river glideth at his own sweet will. Dear God, the very houses seem asleep, and all that mighty heart is lying still. And so I was reading, I was all passionate. I looked around, and the kids are like, huh? and they're really they're there, but somebody said, what does steep mean? And I thought, oh, so I ran to the kitchen.
Uh-huh.
I made a cup of tea and in a glass teacup
Uh-huh.
so they could see, and I said, this is steep. This is steep.
Oh, yes.
Look at it. And then I said, look at the window. Do you see that this room is steeping in sunlight?
Yeah.
And they'll never forget that word.
Oh no.
That's
Exactly.
how we, right? And then, we just did, 3 more things. I said, let's look at this little sonnet and let's see how many sentences there are. There are complete sentences. There are 3. And they're beautiful. They're long, they're short, they're medium, right? And we talked a little bit about the rhyme, but then we dug into personification. And never did sun more be beautifully steep in his first splendor. He was steeping in the beauty of the environment. So we talked, and then I didn't ask these elementary and middle schoolers to now compose a sonnet. No. But I said, we're going to create a poem in a really fun way. What I want you to do is I want you to write a sentence. I want you to be in this environment, and I want you to love and enjoy, and I want you to write a sentence, and I want you to use the word steep in that sentence, and I want you to try to personify something. And I gave a silly example, I wish the chair would wiggle its way over to me so that I could sit in her comfortable lap, on her comfortable lap. So, I'm just playful with the language. And William Wordsworth gave me the lesson. He gave me the lesson.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so once they wrote their sentence, I said, now here's a slash line. Slash it into 3 pieces and rewrite it, and you have a poem. So that's called a line break poem. And it's great because it teaches you to write beautiful prose, but to turn that prose into a poem. So
that's really cool.
You can take any poem and do that.
Yeah. and so simple. I know that's definitely something our parents can take away, and it gives a
Yeah.
good example of how you approach this reading from that ideas point versus the more mechanical traditional approach. We had one parent submit a question beforehand that I'd love to get to before we wrap up. Shantice asked, what approach should you use to help students with speech disorders not to write in short phrases, often how they speak? Our speech pathologist is out of resources as well.
Okay. So, Sara, um, read the first sentence of the E.B. White that you read.
It was the best place to be, thought Wilbur, this warm, delicious cellar with the garrulous geese, the changing seasons, the heat of the sun, the passage of swallows, the nearness of rats, sameness of sheep, the love of spiders, the smell of manure, and the glory of everything. It's a whole bunch of pieces put together.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so my suggestion is to make some long phrase cards. Take a sentence like the one that Sara just read and write the phrases, the garrulous geese, the beauty of everything, and so you have some phrases that can be manipulated, and you can put them in different order. Have single words. Do have something that you put together to make sentences. One of our pieces of curriculum is called Story Maker. And that's exactly what we do. We have cards and objects and story starters to help students learn to create those kind of complex sentences like E.B. White. It's not natural, and it's not just children with speech impairment. Lots of children write really small, short, choppy sentences. Have fun and allow them to write sentences that are big and even silly, But I
Putting
would
the pieces together.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It makes me think of, just when a kid's excited and they're talking about something, they don't even take a breath between, all the things that they're saying, those big run-on sentences, but, that you start with that because that's where the
Yes.
ideas are.
Yes.
And then
I
you pare
think
it down
this is the paradigm shift we're talking about, where you have to give yourself permission to work with a student like that. Like if you took the situation where you took a clear mug, boiled water, put the tea in there,
right,
and you have them talk about it. What do you see? Go at it from an observational thing. I see brown stuff swirling. Okay, there's, a phrase or two.
right.
What else do you see? I see a clear mug. That's another phrase. Like that's I think the paradigm shift where you just actually do it real organically.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily going to come out of a book or a grammar book or whatever.
Yeah.
That's like practicing thinking in a lot of ways, and
Absolutely.
practicing observing. And then you could just, get those papers and what do you call those things, Kim, with the pieces?
Sentence strip.
Sentence strips. And
Yeah.
have a bunch of those and then put them in. Hey, you made an entire sentence.
Right.
So awesome.
We used to have a game when my boys were in middle school called Scrambled Sentence, and it was in a hexagon shaped box, and all it had was phrases, and they would see how many of those phrases they could do in one sentence. And I mean, it would go through the kitchen sometimes. It was awesome. But this is, I think, especially for someone with any kind of, if somebody who's dysgraphic, somebody who's dyslexic, somebody who's autistic, someone who's got speech impediments, what you really want to work on is multisensory, hands-on, tactile, organic learning, and be creative. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'd love you to revisit your website. Blackbirdandcompany.com is the website. So if you're listening on the podcast, I will have all the links as well to the products that Sara and Kimberly were talking about in their website as well in the show notes for the podcast as well as the YouTube channel. But what can parents find in there? I saw that you had a whole parent section on there.
Yeah, we have a parent section. We have a blog, and I try to, and Sara tries to, and our teachers, we try to put up on the blog many posts every month that will inspire writing. So
Yeah,
writing,
a lot of them were very creative too.
and creativity. Yeah, writing and
Yes.
creativity. So that's a place where
We have a
we
lot
like
of
to share.
free things too, like we have a free spelling, and we have if you go to free stuff, I think it says free stuff. We have all
On
kinds
the
of
orange
cool
bar.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can download.
And this month we have a letter writing activity on the free
very
stuff. We
nice.
just put like a friendly letter kind of worksheet and a lettering. Hand lettering is so important.
Oh,
So jump on there. So
yeah.
This is
Very
our
nice.
technology.
Yeah, the pencil. Absolutely.
We believe in the pencil for a lot of reasons.
Yes, it never goes out of style, even though some people say it does.
no, it does not. I always like to, if there's one thing we can leave parents with, Michelangelo said that he saw the angel in the block of marble and he carved until he set it free.
Yeah.
And that's the crux of idea making.
Right.
So I encourage parents and their students to look for that angel and set it free. Every idea is an angel. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
That's beautiful. Got anything close to say, Sara?
Just if anybody has any questions, they can call us or email us. We love to talk to parents and try to
that's
puzzle
good.
out and solve any issues you might be having with your particular student. And we do that a lot. So, and
Yeah.
Kim's a real experienced teacher, having the school in Los Angeles, and has taught every kind of differently abled students. So she's a real wealth of information for those kinds of things. So
That's awesome. And you guys know what homeschool parents go through. You've been there, done that. So
Yeah.
yes. So you're talking to some
Journey.
wise resources when you contact them. Well, thank you both so much for your time, your willingness to share, and just for
fun.
taking this whole writing thing from a different perspective and sharing that with our audience today. I really appreciate that.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. You guys were amazing. And I just encourage you all to check out their website, blackbirdandcompany.com again, and just keep up the amazing work. You guys have some just wonderful materials, and I'm super excited that it's out there and available for parents to be able to use.
Thank you.
See you on the river.
Yeah. We go every 2 years. So I was there this year. So it'll be no, this summer I'm going to England and Norway. So
Oh.
Yeah, I'll be speaking at the Global Home Education Conference in Manchester in July.
Wow.
Yes.
How exciting.
Yep. So that's where I'm headed this summer, but I'll be back in the Tetons next summer. You might find me on the river then. So yeah, well, I'm glad we finally were able to meet up again, Sara, and
Me too.
also to be able to meet you too, Kimberly.
Yes, very nice to meet you.
Absolutely. And thank you all for joining us for this episode of Empowering Homeschool Conversations. Next week, we're going to be talking about how to create harmonious spiritual and homeschool rhythms. And so I know this holiday seasons are coming up, and this is a really good conversation to have because I think chaos tends to ensue, and we don't want that to happen in your home or your homeschooling. So we're going to try to tackle that one next week. So join us back here, same time, same place. And until then, take care, everybody. God bless. And thank you again, ladies.
Thank you.
Enjoyed having you on.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.
This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by SPED Homeschool. Go to spedhomeschool.com to get resources and support for teaching your unique learner at home.